The Nashville Predators have to shake off a tough loss to the Kraken and be ready for Leon Draisaitl and the Edmonton Oilers tonight. We'll share our keys to the game and tell you what we think may be the biggest problem with this Nashville team on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy game day, everyone. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this game day episode, welcoming any first-time listeners, and of course, giving that shout out to our everydayers and to our Locked On Predators insiders. We appreciate your support and we love talking Predators hockey with you. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have two partners in crime.
Back to just one. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Nashville Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News. And my other partner in crime is Miss Minka, who had to show off, for all of those watching on YouTube, had to show off her new festive Halloween bandana because she looks so pretty.
She looks adorable. It's pink, y'all, if you're listening to the audio, and her signature colors are clearly blush and bashful.
Yes.
We are going to talk about hockey and not, pink, the color pink. We do have to talk about the Nashville Predators. They have a big game coming up tonight, and they are still looking for their first win. They're going to try to get it against a team called the Edmonton Oilers, who have some guy named Leon Draisaitl. And that name should send shivers up the spine of Predators fans. We're going to talk about the state of the Preds going into tonight's game. And we're going to tell you what they need to do on the ice to get that first win of the season. Before we dive into all of that, want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Emma, I have been chewing on this because, I text you. So I'm chewing on this. Emma was the recipient of a panic text from me this morning. I just got myself so worked up into a conspiracy theory, but it's all good now. She talked us off the ledge. That's what she's here for. But I do think in all of my mullings about the Nashville Predators, I really am wondering if there isn't a major component of what we've seen in these first three games that might be this unconscious mindset that the team is struggling with. Do you think I'm way off the mark here? Or
I don't think you're off. I think that it's actually kind of something that Andrew Brunette touched on when he talked to the media after the loss to Seattle. It was more of a mindset problem. And again, though, I don't think you're off the mark, but I will say I feel like I'm not concerned because we went through this last year. I know I sound like a broken record, and people are saying, well, was only 3 new players. Like, how different, how big of a difference could that make? Well, a pretty big freaking difference when those 3 players are Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, and Brady Shea. So it's getting those guys up to speed and literally training their brains, or really untraining their brains from doing something a certain way all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now it just, they'll get there. It's just going to take some time.
It seems like, well, first of all, I agree with you. I think, I go back to a TV show you and I love, The West Wing, and one of the major episodes, they talk about let Bartlett be Bartlett. Let President Josiah Bartlett be who he is and not try to be somebody else. And I think in a lot of ways, the Predators just need to let Stamkos be Stamkos. He's going to get it. It feels like there's this big emphasis on, like, we have to unlock Steven Stamkos. You know what he needs? He needs time. He just needs time. He may need some consistent line mates. We can touch on that in a little bit, but I think he just needs time. And it almost feels like so much focus is on unlocking Stamkos and Marchessault, and to a lesser extent, Brady Shea, instead of the players all, and again, I will say this, I think this is unconscious. I think maybe they're not as dialed in individually, maybe, as Andrew Brunette wants them to be. You said something that I was like, "Oh my gosh, please pass the pessimist hat." Because you said, we dealt with this last season, and that is kind of what I think some fans are concerned about, is that, "Oh my gosh, this feels like, again, in 3 games, it feels a little bit like Groundhog Day, like, oh my gosh, Andrew Brunette is going to have to pull them by the collar, kicking and screaming to get them to understand how they have to play to be successful." I don't know that that's reality. I'm just saying that's how it feels, or at least that's how it feels to some in the Nashville Predators fan base.
Well, allow me to quote The West Wing again
Let's
here, and
go.
this is a little bit a longer one, so bear with me. And it's in the context of Josh, one of the characters, is dealing with PTSD, and he
Mm.
gets help from his boss Leo, and Leo tells him a story and talks about this man is walking down the street, he falls in a hole, and he's yelling, "Hey, can someone get me out of this hole?" A doctor walks by, writes him a prescription, throws it down the hole, and then keeps walking. And then a priest walks by. He's like, "Hey, can you get me out of this hole?" He writes him a prayer, throws it down the hole, keeps walking. And then his friend walks by and says, "Hey, buddy, I'm in this hole. Like, please get me out." The friend jumps in the hole with him, and he's like, "What are you doing? Now we're both stuck down here." And the friend says, "Yes, but I've been stuck in this hole before, so I know the way out." And so I
Mm.
think that this can apply here, because this Predators team, has been stuck in this hole before. Now, again, it's 3 games, but
Mhm.
I think you're going to have the benefit of the guys who have been through a year of this system and do understand it a little bit better, that they can help pull Brady Shea, Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault out of that hole. And it's not going to be easy, and there's going to be struggle, and it is going to involve all of them being in the hole at one point,
Mhm.
but eventually they're going to get out of it. And I think that we saw that especially defensively against Seattle. We talked about my one word was defense, question mark, because it just seemed like it was defense optional. And I
Mhm.
think that, these guys, you look at the goal that Brandon Tanev had for Seattle, and you're looking at Brady Shea, like, what in the world? Like, what is he doing?
Mhm.
Where was he supposed to be? And it's just like, oh, he is still, he's coming from Carolina, where he played a man-to-man defense that is so different from what Andrew Brunette wants. And it's just, he's got to take time and he's got to learn. And the only way to do that is at game speed. And that's not
Right.
going, like, that is going to mean a very bumpy road to start. Because, like, it's game speed, it's the best teacher, but it's also the toughest. So I think that they're like, again, it's not gonna be a pretty road to get there, but
They'll
they'll
get
get
out of the hole.
they'll get out of the hole with the
Get out
help
of
of
the
their
hole.
friends.
First of all, everybody should watch The West Wing, one of the greatest shows absolutely ever made, hands down, 7 seasons worth it. But I will say, I agree with you. I like what you're saying, and I want to be sure that we say, look, what we saw and reported in training camp was real. That top line was amazing. Steven Stamkos, Marchessault, and Novak looked great. The defense looked strong. But putting that, like you said, at game speed against NHL opponents, which, let's be honest, Nashville didn't really play many NHL opponents. That first doubleheader in Florida had some NHLers in it, but that was mostly Predators prospects. So this is kind of Nashville's first time with a full NHL roster playing game speed against full NHL rosters. So they just kind of had an odd preseason. So I just want to say what we reported was accurate. Now you have to see it at game speed, and it is going to take some adjustments. I think people are not surprised that maybe Brady Shea is, making some mistakes or playing a different defense or getting used to playing a different defense. And that's going to be a little bit of a struggle. I don't think anybody's surprised that Steven Stamkos, hasn't quite found his groove yet. I think what people are surprised with is that the rest of the team doesn't seem to be able to carry that yet in 3 games. And I just have to keep saying that, in 3 games. I think that is what is surprising to the fan base.
For sure. But I think, and it kind of, I was taken aback by that a little bit too, if I'm honest. But if you really stop and think about it, it speaks to how much hockey is a team sport, that you really can't just rely on one guy or a couple guys to do it all. And if you only have 5 guys on the ice at one time and 2 of them are brand new to the system, then it's, that it gets a little tricky. And I think that, again, they've still got, Andrew Brunette again said, it's still got a little bit of summer hockey, and we still, and he talked about the fire wagon hockey that they were trying to play, which was a reference to the 80s, and which really was like high octane offense, defense optional. And again, you need to have both. You need to have both. And right now, and the thing is with this process, because it is a process to get everyone up to speed, and we saw it last year too, progress, as is the case with many things in life, progress is not linear. It's going to be up and down to get there. It's not going to be a straight line to the top. And so, I mean, we saw that last year. They had the 10 or the 5-10 start. Then they went on like a little baby run in December. They were okay. And then just awful going into and coming out of the All-Star break. And then boom, 19 game point streak. Now, I'm not saying it's necessarily going to be that dramatic this year, but I think that even within these first 3 games, we've seen a little bit of, oh, okay, against Dallas, they were able to almost come back. All right, that looks okay. Detroit was just shoot the freaking puck. And then we get to Seattle, and it's like, oh, that's no, like that does not look good at all. So we're seeing a little bit of like the roller coaster already, and it's going to be like that until it eventually clicks.
And I think you also want to keep in mind as we look at the Seattle game, which was, I would say, by far the roughest of the first 3 games of the season. You have to remember that, because I've seen people say like, well, Seattle's not even a cup contender. And look at, we lost 7-3. Here's what I will say. Seattle, first of all, has a lot of talent on their roster. Second of all, I will say they have a brand new coach, and they are 3 games into the season, and there is not a player on that roster who's not playing with fire under them to try to impress, a brand new coaching staff. So, I don't, and here's the thing, I don't think there are very many bad teams in the league. People talk about San Jose. San Jose took Dallas to overtime on Tuesday night. Like, even a blind squirrel finds a nut sometimes in this league, y'all.
And just, to really twist the knife for Predators fans, guess who scored the overtime goal to win it for Dallas? That's right, Matt Duchene.
I was really hoping you would say Jason Robertson, but I watched the ending and I knew.
Yeah.
Feels good, y'all. Feels good. Well, hey, we're going to just transition away from that little tidbit. We do want to talk about the personnel changes. This has been a big topic of conversation since the Seattle Kraken game. We heard from Andrew Brunette yesterday after practice about this. We're going to talk about the personnel changes and talk about the fact that this is a little bit of a double-edged sword. We're going to do that coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. This is the most wonderful time of the year for sports fans. Major League Baseball playoffs are in full swing. The NFL is well underway. And of course, we know the NHL has kicked off as well. The best place to go and celebrate all of your favorite sports action is with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. NFL fans, you can kick off your season with a big return at FanDuel. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's right. Your first $5 bet will get you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more. And it's all on the same page where you place your bets. So check out the sports details and the great deal at FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Emma, definitely one of the big topics of conversation in these first 3 games has been personnel changes in game, going into games in practice. There was no practice on Wednesday, so we did not get a chance to sort of see what's Andrew Brunette pulling out of the hat for tonight's game. But did get a chance to hear from Andrew Brunette, and when asked about line changes, personnel changes, he said, everything is on the table. When I hear that, what I think is, there goes the top line. What do you think about Nashville keeping the top line together or splitting up the top line? 3 games in. Are we too early to be making this move? Is it time to make this move? Where do you land on this?
Well, I think the bigger, like taking a step back for a second, I think a bigger question is why are we making, first of all, I'm not against making those personnel changes. If something isn't working, then you got to mix it up. For example, I thought a great example of that was the first week or the first game against Dallas. Wasn't working with Tommy Novak on the second line. Boom, one quick switch, 1-for-1, Novak for Sissons. They score 2 goals.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is a good example. And then since then, it feels like Andrew Brunette has been a little trigger happy with the all of the lines. Like, it's not just changing 1 or 2 guys anymore. He's shuffling everyone around. And that's where it gets to a point where it's like Seattle, the Seattle game where I was saying these guys look like they have never played with each other before, because they haven't, because he's sending out all kinds of different line combinations. And so as a concept, I don't dislike the personnel changes. What I do take issue with is the frequency and the fact that it's happening so much within games. Now, that being said, when it comes to the top line, I think, yes, all options do have to be on the table, because that top line, which last year was the line that you could always rely on, and it was the one line that Vancouver needed to neutralize in order to win their playoff series, because Nashville was not a threatening team beyond that top line. So Vancouver focused on that top line, and look what happened. So now that line has looked a little quiet again, 3 games. But if even the line that's supposed to be your sure thing line is not looking like a sure thing anymore, then maybe you think about it.
Yeah, that's a hard one, because like you said, they were so successful last season and they looked great. They picked up right where they left off in training camp, but we haven't seen it in the first 3 games. And that was interesting to me, because I felt like that was going to be something that we would see right away based on what we saw in training camp. I thought, okay, they're going to get out there and they're going to get right back to it, because they look like they were in training camp. And it hasn't quite happened. And so I do think we need to brace ourselves and be prepared for the fact that perhaps we will see Forsberg with Stamkos, or O'Reilly with Stamkos, or some sort of shift in that top line, which is a little bit tricky, because you then have taken your sure thing and broken it up 3 games into the season. I'm with you as well on this. This is tough because as a concept, I get that you want to spark something, but I think this line shuffling is a double-edged sword because you are trying to get a spark, but you are sacrificing chemistry. And chatted just briefly the other day, earlier in the week, with Colton Sissons, and was just talking to him about like, hey, part of your superpower is that you go everywhere and you do everything. Do you like that? And he said, well, yeah, that's, sort of how I have built my career is I'm kind of the guy that goes in and out. But yeah, I actually like playing on a line and developing chemistry with consistent line mates as well. And I'm like, gosh, there's the double-edged sword. Yes, you can swap in Colton Sissons just about anywhere. You probably can swap in Philip Forsberg just about anywhere, but you are sacrificing consistency and chemistry. I also worry that all of the line shuffling, you're going to lose some players in that. And I think we've already seen Tommy Novak's chance be way smaller than I thought it would be initially. And Andrew Brunette may cycle back to it. But that was a pretty short leash if we're 3 games in and he is no longer playing with Stamkos and Marchessault in games. That's a pretty short leash for me.
Well, it is, but I also think that just because he gets yanked from that role initially doesn't mean that he won't be back there at some point. I think to me the issue, after talking to, sounds like what you said to, or what Sissons said to you, is I've heard a very similar thing from a number of the players that I've talked to, which is that we like playing with like the same guys. We like that consistency and we like that chemistry. I think to me, and I kind of maybe immediately after the game, I couldn't quite put my finger on it after the Seattle game, but after thinking about it some more, the bigger issue to me is that I think, now whether this is accurate or not, I can't speak to that because I'm not
Educated
inside.
speculation, not reporting.
Well, I'm not inside Andrew Brunette's brain, so I don't know. But I will say how it, what it conveys, making those constant line changes within a game, it kind of sends a panicky message to your players, to the other team. And it sends a message of like, oh no, all right, okay, we gotta change it up now. And it's very frantic, it's very panicky. And I think you could see that, at least I could see that in the way that the Predators were playing in that game against Seattle. Like I said, very frantic. Nothing was crisp, nothing was clean, everything was fumbled. It was very panicky, like their house is on fire and they're trying to get out really fast. And that's not going to be success. You're not going to be successful that way. And so I think that, I don't know. I'm not saying, oh, Andrew Brunette panicked, but I'm saying that his actions send a message of, oh, we're in panic mode right now. And the other team can capitalize on that. So I just think that, again, it's only 3 games. I'm still not worried. Two things can be true. The Seattle game was atrocious, but it's also not time to panic. Both things can be true.
I agree with what you're saying about kind of the vibe of the line changes. That third period in Seattle where we just didn't see Juuso Parssinen hardly at all, where we saw, different line changes. We saw Forsberg with Stamkos and all these different shifts. It felt like an episode of I Love Lucy, where things just start spiraling out of control, and you end up shoving chocolates in your mouth. That's a little bit how the game felt. So yes, you want to find the right combinations. Yes, you need to figure out what is going to unlock the best play from, line mates. But let's see if, maybe a slower roll is good. Of course, like I said, we'll find out at morning skate this morning what Andrew Brunette has up his sleeve for the game tonight. That game, by the way, against the Edmonton Oilers, who just got their first win. They too have had a rough start to the season, but they have a guy, and I know you think I'm going to say Connor McDavid, but I'm not. They have a guy named Leon Draisaitl who should have Nashville feeling a little afraid. We're going to tell you why. Today's episode's brought to you by Gametime. If you are looking forward to seeing this Predators team play this season, or if you just want to go out and enjoy some great live events, you have got to check out all the deals available at Gametime. Gametime is the fastest and easiest way to get tickets for your favorite sports, music, theater, and comedy. They have this great feature called Gametime Picks that makes the process so much faster and easier. Gametime Picks is going to filter out all of the fluff and only show you incredible deals on great seats so you don't waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. They have great deals available right now on Nashville SC, the Tennessee Titans, and of course, they've got tickets to see the Nashville Predators at Gametime as well. Gametime has a low price guarantee, and they have the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. It's the way daily fantasy sports should be played. It's not you against 1,000 strangers. It's just you against the PrizePicks projections for your favorite players in your favorite sports. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, with PrizePicks, your picks are still alive. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNHL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Okay, Emma. Well, Edmonton started off a little rough this season as well. Nashville is in very good company. They finally got their first points of the season in overtime. It took them overtime. That was actually a fun game. Mitchkoff got his first NHL goal. So let's hear that. So they were off to a little bit of a tough start this season as well, right out of the gate. Nashville fans can relate. Here is the difference, I think. We saw the Edmonton team go through this last season. You know, they were 3-9-1, made a coaching change, had some success, had some struggles, and then they kind of got it together. But then in the playoffs, it was the same thing where, like, were they going to be able to win some playoff series? And then they had to kind of get it together. The same thing in the Stanley Cup Finals. So we know Edmonton has that resiliency factor. They also have another factor by the name of Leon Draisaitl. And Leon Draisaitl, my friends, he hates Nashville. He hates us. It's so personal.
I was going to say he probably loves us. He probably loves it here in Nashville. I mean, really padded his numbers over the years here. But I think that, the Oilers' issue primarily is going to be their defense. They do not, beyond Darnell Nurse, Ekholm, and Bouchard, they don't really have a strong defense. Offense, they have Leon Draisaitl, so they're fine. And then the Predators. So I think the key for the Predators is going to be to capitalize on that. But the problem is they cannot defend the way that they did or didn't in the Seattle game, or Leon Draisaitl is going to have like 8 goals. So it's, I don't know. It's going to be tough. I mean, both teams are definitely coming in wanting needing a win. I mean, the Predators a little bit more so because they still don't have one, but the Oilers are still going to be, they know it's a Western Conference opponent, and it's an important game for them, because now they've gotten that one. And we've heard the Predators say this too. It's like, we just need to get one and then we'll get rolling. And now the Oilers are probably feeling that way too. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
It's going to be a game of hockey. Connor McDavid, a little bit of a quieter start. He's got 4 assists in their first 4 games. But again, we talk about Leon Draisaitl. He has 2 goals already on the season. People talk about the real estate market in Nashville being so outrageously high. And in my heart, I'm like, it's because Leon Draisaitl owns all of Nashville.
He does.
Because it's so, you all, in 26 games against the Nashville Predators, Leon Draisaitl has 25 goals, 17 assists. He averages 1.62 points per game against the Predators. I don't know what it is, but he is Nashville's kryptonite, and they're going to have to do something about that. And like you said, you cannot give up the chances that Nashville gave up against the Seattle Kraken. The other thing that I will say that Nashville should capitalize on is goaltending, because, man, it has been a tough start in net for Stuart Skinner. 845 save percentage, averaging 4.42 goals against allowed. So it's been a little bit of a tough start in net. Nashville has to do that thing that Andrew Brunette has talked about. Stop trying to score with skill and score some greasy goals. And I think that is something that's going to lead to Nashville's success, especially if the goaltenders are still kind of trying to find their groove. Get in front of the net, put traffic in front of the net, get the rebounds, move these goaltenders around, screen them, and let's see what can happen with Nashville. So for me, it's like, get these high danger shots on net, get traffic in front of the net, and let's see what they can do. Anything, please. Yeah. Special teams too, I think, is going to be interesting. Of course, Edmonton, always a power, just a power play nightmare. They're off to a little bit of a slower start. Nashville working on a new penalty kill system. So that takes some adjustment. I also think that's probably an adjustment for UC Saros and Scott Wedgwood in net, which I don't know that we've talked about before. So special teams, stay out of the box, Nashville. Let's just not even,
Let's just not even go there.
Let's just not even. So Predators tonight, going to be looking for that first win of the season against Leon Draisaitl and the Edmonton Oilers. Of course, puck drop is going to be 7:00, Bridgestone Arena tonight. We will be back tomorrow to recap the game. Of course, we're going to share our one word to describe the game. And hopefully, friends, it's going to be something really exciting. It's going to be the first win of the season. The other thing that's going to happen tomorrow night, Emma, so great. We're going to be celebrating. This is such a milestone for me, and the story is incredible. Luke Schenn's 1,000th career NHL game, which just blows my mind. 1,000 NHL games.
That's so many games.
Playing the way that he plays that's so many games. He had such an incredible story, because this is a player who many people may have thought his career was over at around 750 games, maybe somewhere in there, where he was just sort of floating around in the AHL, working his way back, and come back to Stanley Cups. He's a leader, a glue guy, Andrew Brunette calls him, in the locker room. So we're going to be celebrating Luke Schenn's amazing career, really amazing career tonight as well against the Edmonton Oilers. So we're going to talk about that again on tomorrow's show. Before we sign off here today, Emma, will you let everyone know where they can find you and your work?
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and Minka is back next to me right now. You can't see her on camera, but she would like you all to know that you can find plenty of pictures of her on social media as well. And you can find my work online at The Hockey News.
And you can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work at Penalty Box Radio as well. That's going to do it for this game day edition of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow to discuss that Oilers Predators game. We'll see you then.